Hey guys, welcome back to Free Drop Live. Delighted again to be joined by SA golf legend Dale Hayes. Dale, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day once again to chat to us.
No problem. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you so much. That means the world to me. So yeah, I think a good starting point would be to just wrap up your playing career. One thing I wanted to chat to you about was your win at the 1974 World Cup of Golf with Bobby Cole. What was it like, playing in Venezuela and just general South American conditions?
Firstly, it was a very good golf course. It really was a golf course called La Guanita, and in Caracas, and really a terrific golf course. And America had a very strong team. They had Hale Irwin, who'd won the U.S. Open, and they had Lee Trevino, who'd won the U.S. PGA. In those days, they picked the U.S. Open champion and the U.S. PGA champion to play. And Japan had Isao Aoki and Jumbo Ozaki playing, which were two very strong players from Japan. And obviously, then you had the British and all the rest of the teams. But the week before, I'd won the PGA Championship here in South Africa, and I'd played around with Harold Henning. And Harold Henning said to Bobby Cole, which I only heard the next week, but he said to Bobby Cole, he said, the way Hayes is playing, all you have to do is play reasonably, and you guys will win the World Cup. Well, Bobby Cole didn't play reasonably. He played unbelievably good golf. In fact, I don't know if I've ever seen better golf over 4 rounds than Bobby Cole played in that World Cup. He made both Trevino and Irwin look silly. He hit the ball further than them. He hit the ball straighter than them. He hit iron shots inside of them. He putted better than they did. He really was absolutely outstanding. And, the proof is in the pudding. He won the individual. We won the World Cup of golf. But the funny hole, or the big hole, came at, I think it was the 12th or 13th hole in the final round. And I did my tee shot in the rough. So I'm used to being in the rough, so it was fine. I was in the rough on the right, and they had this buffalo grass. It's like kikuyu, but the blades are about double the size of kikuyu.
Yeah.
It's really thick-bladed grass. And I was in this grass, and between myself and the green was a water hazard. From the fairway, it was kind of more to the right of the pin, but from where I was going, I had to go directly over it. And Bobby Cole came into the rough with me, and I said, "What do you think?" I said to him, "What do you think I need to get to the green?" So he said, "What do you mean you need to get to the green? You're going to chip it out, surely." So I said, "No, I can hit this on the green." He said, "No, man, you just chip it out." So I said, "No, I think I can hit it on the green." He said, "Hayes, if you hit this ball on the green from here, we'll win this World Cup, I promise you." And I got up and I hit it into about 12 feet from the hole. And Bobby Cole just shook his head and walked to his ball. He couldn't believe it. And what made it unbelievable for Bobby, now Bobby was a wonderful player. I mean, perhaps of all the golfers I've ever seen in my life, I think he got less out of his talent than any other professional I've ever seen. He was a wonderful player. But Bobby was physically quite weak. He had kind of weakish arms. He got injured a lot. And Bobby, looked at that line. For him, it was a chip out. There's no way Bobby could hit it on the green from that line. It just wasn't strong enough. So, he just couldn't believe that shot. For me, that was one of the highlights of my career is obviously winning the World Cup of Golf for South Africa. In those days, you got one chance to represent your country as a professional golfer, and that was in the World Cup. And to go and be able to do that and win was phenomenal.
Yeah. What is it like, having to discuss with a second party, like your decisions and things like that? Can it be quite disconcerting, or do you generally not mind it?
No, we didn't discuss very much. I played in the World Cup twice with Bobby, and I was supposed to play once with Hugh Bayaki, but we got kicked out the country, so I wasn't able to play. But, we didn't discuss very much, to be honest. We played our own games. Every now and then we might, on the green, you might call the guy across to help you a little bit. But pretty much we played our own game. And, Bobby and I were very friendly. We were good buddies. So, it was pretty easy for us to play. I think it would have been more difficult if I'd played with somebody like Gary Clark. It would have been a little bit more difficult because Gary, we're different ages. It would have been there wouldn't have been the sort of same sort of vibe between the two of us that I had with Bobby.
Yeah, and obviously, if the World Cup had been played in America, you wouldn't have been able to play with Gary then, because obviously he didn't want you to go and play in the States.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, a couple of years later, it was in America. We went to Palm Springs. Bobby and I went to Palm Springs, but we didn't fare quite so well that year. Although that year I finished second in the individual, and Bobby didn't play quite so well. So we did play in America in the World Cup once.
Cool. And yeah, just sort of moving forward. I mean, it is quite well documented that you started to play less tournament golf sort of from 29-30. What were the reasons behind that?
Well, there were basically two reasons. The first, I mentioned there, the World Cup of Golf. Hugh Baiocchi and I were representing South Africa in Greece. And we played in the Pro-Am on the Wednesday. And the Wednesday afternoon, they came across to me. I was practicing on the driving range. And they came across to me and they said, listen, we've got some bad news for you. You can't play in the tournament, in the World Cup. And I just started to laugh. I thought they were joking. And they said, no, we're quite serious. The African nations have all threatened to pull out of the Olympics if South Africa is allowed to play in the World Cup. And so obviously then I knew they were being serious. Hugh Baiocchi had gone into town to do some shopping. And an hour or two later, Hugh Baiocchi came back and I went to him and I said, listen, Hugh, I've got some bad news for you. We can't play in the World Cup tomorrow. Well, he thought I was kidding because I like a practical joke. So he thought I was joking. So it took me about half an hour to convince him that I was serious. And what was, obviously it was a very bad experience. I mean, as a sportsman, and a youngish sportsman, you're not involved in politics. You don't get involved. I mean, we spent most of our lives playing on the tour overseas and everything like that. We didn't even vote or anything. So, we were South African, and apartheid was part of South Africa. So I'm not trying to escape it. But I mean, we certainly weren't political. In fact, 3 years later, golf was the very first sport to allow people of color to play and to become members of the South African PGA. So we did it 10, 12 years before any other sport did it. But be that as it may. What was nice about it was that Hale Irwin from the American team, Baldovino Dasu from the Italian team, Mark James from the English team, and one or two others all threatened to pull out if they didn't allow South Africa to play. So the South African ambassador came to us and said, listen, you've got to talk these people into playing because we don't want to ruin the whole event. A lot of work's gone into this event and we don't want to ruin the whole event, and it'll make it even a bigger issue. If that happens, then if you just go off quietly into the sunset, which is what ended up happening. We talked the others into playing, and we just went off the next day, and we had 48 hours to leave the country. We didn't even stay and enjoy some of the beautiful Greek beaches. So we had to leave the country, and that I think was for me was the start of me thinking that there are other things in life to do. I grew up at a golf club, and I really enjoyed kind of the club atmosphere. And, from the time I was a tiny, I was involved with normal golfers, with amateur golfers, the club golfers. And I loved that kind of vibe and that kind of life. So I started to think about that, and I started to think, there are other things I would like to do in my life other than just play golf. I love golf. I didn't just want to play the game. I'd like to do some other things. And so that's, I think, where it started. And a couple of years later, Mowbray Golf Club advertised for a professional. And I thought, I'll apply for the job. And I got the job. And that made the decision for me. I thought, okay, this is it. So I took the job at Mowbray Golf Club and spent 4 very happy years there.
So it's interesting you bring up Mowbray, because my dad always tells me that, when you were the pro, there were always bets to be made around Club Champs time. So he told me that apparently one of the bets you had going was guys could place money on themselves to, make 4 falls at the first. And he said the one year he actually he had made 3 falls and then hit it to 5 feet on the first. And then it's like, well, does he hold a putt and make 3, or does he deliberately miss it and take your money? So I think the members definitely enjoyed that aspect of your time there.
Yeah, I think after traveling overseas for 10 years before that, I came with some kind of different things, different ideas, and different ways of doing things. And not all of them worked. Thank goodness people like your dad remember some of the ones that were fun and some of the ones that worked, because certainly they didn't all work. But we did have fun. Peter Todd, of course, Peter Todd was never scared of it. I mean, he loved to have a little bit of a bet on anything. And year in and year out, he took our money, because Peter Todd was playing really good golf, and he was especially good if he was playing for his own money. He played better golf. So Peter Todd, I think made quite a lot of money in those club championships. He won a few of them while I was there.
Yeah.
I would have think over the time your dad probably lost money to us. I think I don't know, but I think he probably lost money to us. We did a thing there. We used to stand on a par 3, and I would stand there and I'd say, right, if you hit the green, I'll give you a golf shirt. If you miss the green, you have to buy the golf shirt. Okay, so the worst that happened, you had to buy a golf shirt. So that was the worst thing that could happen. Anyway, Mike East, I don't know whether you ever met him.
No.
He was a very prominent member at Mowbray for many, many years. He was playing with a double barrel name. I can't think of it right now. Anyway, they were playing together, and we got onto that hole, and we had the bet, and they missed the green, and they said, okay, now you hit. Okay, if you hit the green, we'll buy another shirt. If you miss the green, then you give us a shirt. So the first time this happened, I hit the green, and so they had to buy 2 shirts each. Anyway, then of course, by the time that we got into the pub afterwards, everybody was joking and chirping about that, how they'd lost 2 shirts and all this sort of stuff. The next time I did it, a couple of months later, we got onto that hole, and they hit the green, and I missed the green. So I had to give them 2 shirts each. So no, we had a lot of fun. Mowbray was a terrific golf club, wonderful members. They really were. They were. That was a very, very happy time of my life. Was the few years I was there as the pro at Mowbray.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, it's such a nice layout as well. I mean, from a course standpoint, it's always been one of the better designed courses in the Western Cape, which makes it such a joy to play. I mean, that's where my brother and I learned the game as well, and it's so much fun.
The interesting thing about Mowbray, though, it's very cleverly laid out with in terms of the wind, because it doesn't matter how hard the wind blows at Mowbray. You play some holes downwind, some holes into the wind, and some left to right and some right to left. You play, every hole is different. The holes go all in different directions. So very cleverly laid out from a wind point of view as well. And it's also, unlike a course like in the old days, Milderton was, where it was kind of 9 holes out and 9 holes in. So you play 9 holes downwind and 9 holes into the wind. Mowbray, you played with the wind all over the place. And you can always play Mowbray, no matter how hard the wind blew. They're a good golf course, really was. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, and then I think the other anecdote that my dad wanted me to ask you about was a time you held a clinic at Mowbray where you performed a trick shot with a watch. Would you mind sort of telling that story?
Yeah, I'm trying to, when you mentioned that, and I'm trying to think where I first heard about it as well, and I can't for the life of me think about it, but I want to go back to the very first time I did it.
Okay.
The very first time I did it was at Pretoria West Golf Club on the western side of Pretoria, obviously. And I went there, and you had to get the right watch, and it had to obviously have a rubber or leather strap, so you could lie it flat. Okay, it wouldn't work so well with a strap, a metal strap.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the guys, and eventually I pick out a guy who's got exactly the right watch, and eventually I go over to him, and I announce to all the people there are probably 100 people in the crowd watching, and I say to them, listen, I'm going to show you something here that I've just perfected. Is hitting the ball off the top of a watch. And I go to this guy and I say, please, can I get your watch? And I notice it's an Omega watch. It's a beautiful watch. But now, I swapped the watch. So I've got a watch in my bag that looks similar. It's got the same color strap and everything.
Yeah.
And so I take this watch and I put a little piece of putty on the top, and I put the ball on top of that, and I lie it on the fairway. And of course, I make a big thing of it where I kind of chop into the ground like this. I say, I'm just joking. And anyway, I take a swing and I just demolish this watch. This watch goes flying through the air in 1,000 pieces. Okay, and I look back at the guy and I said, Al, I'm so sorry, man. I said, that's the first time I've ever done it that it hasn't worked. I said, really, I'm sorry. And then I just carry on with my clinic. I completely leave it and I carry on with the clinic. But every now and then I look over at this guy, and this guy's like this. I mean, you can see he's like devastated, but I don't say a word. And as I finish the clinic, he comes straight over to me, and I think, jeepers, I hope this guy's not aggressive. He's going to, he's just going to punch me on my nose. And he said, my wife gave me that watch for our wedding. I don't know how I'm going to tell her. I don't know how I'm going to tell her that this watch is broken now. Okay. And I said, no, just relax. And I go to the golf bag and I give him his watch back. You have never seen a human being more relieved in your whole life. The guy, I promise you, it was like I'd just given the guy 100,000 rand. He couldn't stop thanking me. I mean, anyway, so when I get to Mowbray Golf Club, we had a member at Mowbray Golf Club by the name of Rob Barry. Rob was one of the characters, a good golfer, and he was one of the characters at the golf club. And I did the same thing with Rob. And I put this watch down, put the ball on top, a few practice swings and everything like that. And when I knocked this thing into smithereens, I looked over at Rob, and his eyes he couldn't believe that I'd done it, because he really thought I was just going to clip it off the top of the watch. So, trouble was I ran out of cheap watches to buy, so eventually I stopped doing it. But it was a good trick while it lasted.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then tell me about how your life progressed after your time at Mowbray. What did you get up to after that?
Well, unfortunately, we had a little bit of a disagreement with the club captain at Mowbray, unfortunately, and so I decided to leave Mowbray, and I went into a retail business in Cape Town, which was very unsuccessful, majorly unsuccessful, and in fact, I lost every single thing I had. And so about 3 years later, I left Cape Town with my tail between my legs, and literally on the bones of my whatever. And fortunately, I'd met, when I played in America, I met a fellow by the name of Steve Dunn, who had a chain of golf shops, and he heard what had happened. He was used to come out and hunt with my brother, and my brother told him what had happened. So he phoned me up and he said, listen, I've got a job for you in America, in my golf shops. And I spent 2 years there, and he gave me the most wonderful opportunity of getting back onto my feet, both in terms of confidence and, in terms of, financially. In terms of confidence, when the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your life is that you've missed a 3-foot putt, and suddenly you lose everything. You can imagine what that would do to your confidence.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a slow thing. It was like, like that. So, my confidence, needed major rebuilding. And Steve gave me the opportunity. And it's funny how life works, because Steve Dunn eventually sold up his business in America, very successful business, made a huge amount of money, and moved to South Africa. And he developed Zabula.
Oh, really?
Which was the very first golf course ever built in a game reserve. And he did it. Steve did it. And he got me involved in Zabula. So I was involved with Steve, and we got Peter Bakovich to design the golf course. And so it's funny how life works, kind of goes around in circles. But So I spent 2 years in America with Steve, and it was when I worked for him. He also had a manufacturing part of his business. So I got the opportunity there to build trick clubs.
Okay.
And then the whole trick golf thing and the idea of doing clinics started. And his guys that worked in the factory helped me to put these clubs together and build these different clubs that had two heads and shafts that went all over the place with hose pipes on and all these kind of silly things. And then eventually I came back to South Africa with this set of trick clubs and the idea to do corporate golf days, to do MCs, do all that sort of stuff at corporate golf days. That was the concept that I came back to South Africa with. And I also came back with a swing machine, which was a 1988 version of what today is a flight scope or a TrackMan. I came back with something like that would give you your face angle and all this sort of stuff. And I used to have to stand on this machine and swing and stuff. There's nothing like it is today. But and I traveled around with this machine and then did clinics and then would do the prize givings and stuff like that. And in the late 80s and into the early 90s, I pretty much made a living doing that. And then we started up Complete Golfer magazine in the late 80s, 1989. And it was myself and a guy called Tony Giorgio and Dennis Brains. And PJ were involved in the very early days they owned it in the early days. We took it over from them. I'll never forget when we started with a magazine, Peter Makovich, who's a great friend of mine, Peter Makovich said, Hayes, now I know that you've actually lost it. You've finally actually lost it. You've gone punchy. How can you start a golf magazine? I mean, there's just not enough stuff to ever write about to keep a magazine going in South Africa. Huh. Well, about five years later, I said to Peter Makovich, I said, Mako, every single issue that we've had a throwaway editorial. We've always had too much editorial for the size of the magazine. Yeah. And just amazing how many different aspects there are to our game. When you think there's the equipment, there's instruction, there's the golf courses, there's the people, they're the stars, they're the club golfers, they're the hole-in-ones, they're the all these different aspects that you can write about. Anyway, so I spent 6 years, with on the magazine permanently, and then Sharon Brains, Dennis Brains' wife, and I started up an events business, running golf days, which we had for 20 years. So that was a business that we did for a long time. But obviously that started from the fact that I was doing the clinics and the prize givings, and then eventually companies would come and say to us, "Listen, why don't you just take over the whole golf day?" Well, unfortunately, that's done the circle around as well. Yeah. Because nowadays it's going back to the companies doing their own golf days because they don't want to spend the money to hire an outsider. So it's amazing how times change.
Yeah, no, it's. I didn't actually realize that you were, part of Complete in the early days. How did you feel about things when Digest came about? Did you? Something that was also 90. I want to say 95 or 96.
That was a middle. That was about 7 years after we started. Digest came along, and obviously, I mean, we were concerned about it, but I think competition is always good, eh? It makes you all get better, and it's sad now that Golf Digest is no longer around because, again, I go back to the thing. I think if you've got competition, you get better, and you get complacent if there's no competition. So it made us improve in a lot of respects. We had to rethink a few things that we were doing and jack up a few things that we were doing. But, I think for a long time, Complete Golfer was kind of ahead of the curve. And Complete Golfer was a genuine South African magazine. Golf Digest was always very American. Most of it was American. So, I think that was the advantage that Complete Golfer always had, was that it was genuinely a South African magazine, and still is today.
Yeah. No, definitely. I actually saw you on. When did you do that chat with Complete? Was that yesterday or?
A couple of days ago. Yeah.
I noticed the Wi-Fi connection was considerably stronger than it was when we
Well, I
chatted.
did it from the same place I'm doing it from today.
It's clearly
different
done.
background.
Yes, yeah. And then tell me about when commentary became a possibility for you, and when you were first asked to do that.
That happened in the early 90s. I went up to the Nedbank Golf Challenge. And in those days, Trevor Quirk and Martin Locke and Dennis Hutchinson, Willem van Drimmelen, they used to do the commentary for the Nedbank Golf Challenge. It was covered by SABC still in those days. Supersport hadn't come around yet. And they used to have this tower alongside the 18th fairway on the right-hand side of the 18th fairway, very high tower. And Trevor Quirk said to me, come up and see how we do things. So I said, I'd like to do that. So which I did. I went up there, and the next thing I'm sitting down next to him, and somebody, I forget who it was, stands up and he takes the headphones and he puts them on me and gives me a microphone and starts to chat to me. And we just chatted back and forth, and what do you think about the shot that he's got to play here and all this sort of stuff. And the next thing, I was sat there for an hour or so, and about 2 years or so later, SABC decided to do a magazine golf show called The Golf Bag.
Okay.
And Trevor Quirk at that time was headed up the sport for SABC, and Trevor put my name forward to host the show, and which I did for the year that the show ran. And his wife Susie actually produced the show, and then we went. That's when Supersport started. So then we went to Supersport with the idea for the show Pitch and Putter.
Okay.
And Pitch and Putter, they accepted that. So then we actually produced the show Pitch and Putter. We owned the show. So we did everything. We produced the show. We used to just take a tape to them, and we got Bells to sponsor it. And every week we would take an hour and a half, 90-minute show it was. Can you imagine that today? It was a 90-minute show every single week. And, we did between that and then Super Golf, which came along straight after Pitch and Putter ended. And why it changed names was that the sponsor changed. And the sponsor didn't be associated with the name Pitch and Putter because they said that was too close to Bells. So they decided to change the name of the show. And that went on for about nearly 18 years.
Yeah, I remember those Wednesday nights with such fondness watching on Supersport. Always definitely a highlight of any golfing week for me. But I'm curious, like obviously you were very, very busy, or you've pretty much been super busy since you stopped playing competitively. But do you miss it at all? Like that the competition aspect?
I don't know whether you'd call it a part of my personality or certain part of my makeup or whatever, but I'm not the sort of person that kind of looks back on things and regrets them or misses them or anything. If I do something and I make a huge mistake or a huge faux pas or whatever, I'm the sort of person that looks back and said, Al, I shouldn't have done that, and lie there and cry about it for a week. It's done. When I did it, thinking I was doing the right thing. Whether it turned out to be wrong or whatever, it's too late now. So I don't look back. I don't regret it. I did enjoy it. I was extremely fortunate that I played well and I won tournaments. I experienced golf at the second highest level. The highest level being somebody who won majors.
Yes.
Okay, I never won a major, but I won tournaments all over the world. So I was at the second highest level. I experienced golf. So, I don't think I can't regret the 10 years that I played. And I don't regret stopping it because I have done some of the most wonderful things, since being involved in television, magazines, being involved designing golf courses with Peter Matkovich, now owning a golf course. Those things are a dream come true.
Yeah, I'd imagine it keeps things interesting. I think being a tour pro I'd imagine, become quite mundane after a certain period of time.
you know, being on tour, um, I think when you're young is so much fun. I mean, it really is. It's a great life. I look at Brandon Stone and Hayden Porteous and
Yeah.
Christian Bassault, our top young players, and I just think to myself, I hope they realize just what a great time of their lives this is,
Mm.
because this really is. Well, unfortunately, right now we're in COVID-19. Okay, so maybe this is the wrong time to be saying this, but they don't have any hassles in their lives. They travel the world, they're living well, they're making money. What a life, eh? It really is. They're playing with the best golfers in the world. They're playing in great tournaments. They've seen all these wonderful countries. They want in for nothing. And to be honest, I was kind of in the same boat when I played. The life was different. Yes, we didn't have private planes, and we didn't make the kind of money they're making today. But
Sure.
if you played well, you lived well. By the standards of those days. So I just hope that they realize how lucky they are and really take advantage of it and thank their lucky stars for what they're going through, because this will be the best time of their lives. It really will be.
Yeah.
Life becomes more complicated as you get older.
Yeah. No, I can only imagine. So I was thinking about it the other day. Was there much overlap between yourself and David Fearty? And
David hadn't started playing when I stopped. But then, after I lost our business in Cape Town, I had 1 year exemption on the European tour for being in the top 50 money winners. And that was about 1986, I think that was, that I tried to play a few tournaments. I only played a few tournaments, but I got to know David Fearty then. And I was, I obviously for a long time was friendly with John O'Leary and Sam Torrance and those guys, and they were all friendly with David Fearty. So often we would go to dinner together and stuff like that. So David actually stayed in our house in Cape Town when he came to South Africa the 1 year. And in fact, it was the same year that he met his South African wife, his first wife. David is a hysterically funny man.
Yeah.
He's seriously clever. He really is. He's a very, very clever guy, and he's seriously funny. And he's one of these guys that just has a whole different way of looking at everything. He doesn't see things the way, well, I don't know how you see things, so I can't talk for you, but he certainly doesn't see the things the way that I see them or with other people that I know see them. And he really is a very, very funny man, and a very, very nice man too. Very, very nice. Unfortunately, David's had more than his share of personal issues, which have been publicized a lot. And all credit to him that he's put them all out there in the open, and he's overcome them. But he's I can't say enough about David. He's a very, very funny man.
No, I mean, I think you should also give yourself credit, because listening to you on the European tour is also an absolute treat, with your back and forth between yourself and Dennis Hutchinson, for sure.
Hutchie and I have a lot of fun. No question about it.
So I actually have a question from Bernard Babas again. He wants to know, do you still play much these days?
I do play. I don't play much. I do play. I don't chip very well. My chipping is very, very suspect, to say the least. But I do play. The nice thing now is that when I hit a shot, I can hear it land. I can still use the nail on the ball when it does land. So, I don't play very well, but I do still play. Yes. Yeah. I play mainly, I don't play with people who I think are going to expect me to play well.
Yeah.
I don't play well. So I don't want to be kind of put out there as the feature four ball, and that I'm part of it. So I don't play in anything like that. I'll play with my wife, I'll play with close friends, I'll play with my son, that kind of stuff. That's about it.
Yeah. I suppose, I mean, that's actually quite cool though, in a way, because you're going back to your roots in a sense, and going back to why you actually took the game up in the first place.
Yeah, because now I play golf now like most people play golf. Jack Nicklaus actually said it once. He said, he said all his life people have come up to him and said, Al, I wish I could play golf like you. He said, now you know what? Most people can. That's me. Most people can play golf like I do now.
Yeah. But and then what else something else I wanted to chat to you about is, I think a lot of people aren't really aware of the philanthropic activities you're involved in, and one of them is the South African Disabled Golf Association. Tell me about how you first became aware of them, and what sort of resonated with you in terms of their philosophy.
When we had Pitch and Putter, we filmed some of their events, and so that's how I got to see them. And we also were involved in an event called the BOE Sports Stars event. And basically what that was is that it was an idea actually that came about with Peter Matkovich and David Sudders, who's the most capped Springbok amateur golfer from Durban. They came up with this idea of having a tournament or a golf day where you had a team of 8 sportsmen from different sports. So you had a team of rugby players, a team of soccer players, a team of tennis players, etc., etc. And you had, sort of a dozen or 15 teams from different sports. And when that first started, they said, we're going to give any money that's raised, we're going to give to disabled sport.
Okay.
And then slowly it kind of started to focus a little bit more on golf. So that was the first time. And I'll never forget one of the very first tournaments that we did. Kali Knutzer came along to the tournament. And he was very, very funny. And he really added a lot to it at the prize giving, doing auctions and stuff like that to try and raise money for them. Then a guy by the name of Eugene got involved in disabled sport.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and in disabled golf, excuse me. And he invited me to come along and start doing the prize givings and auctions at some of the events to try and help them to make more money, which I was very, very happy to do. And while anytime we had a chance, we would try and help them to get their events on television, to try and promote the fact that no matter almost what disability you had, you could still play golf.
Yes.
And it's amazing, some of these guys. I mean, I'll never forget, there was a guy that was in a wheelchair, and he used to pump the wheelchair up so that he would be more upright, and then he would stand and hit this drive because he was paralyzed from his waist down. So he would just be able to swing with his arms like this, and he would hit the drive, and then he would get onto the green and putt out of his wheelchair. He'd have to putt, and we interviewed him. It was at Houghton Golf Club.
Okay.
And afterwards I interviewed him, and I said to him, what is the hardest part for you about playing golf? And I'm meaning, is the hardest part driving or trying to play out of the rough or whatever? And he said to me, the hardest part for me is trying to play out of the rough. He says, because he had Houghton, the grass is long like this. And I'm thinking, that's amazing. He's worried about trying to play out of thick grass. Meanwhile, he's playing 18 holes wheeling his golf cart. His wheelchair. Sorry, not his golf cart. His wheelchair. He's wheeling it for 18 holes. Every single shot, he's got to pump up this thing. He's doing that for 18 holes, and he's worried about the grass being this long. And I mean, they are just, those guys, it's just so amazing for me that they've accepted what's happened to them, and they have a smile on their face and they enjoy it. It's like they've been given a second chance, and they're going to make the most of it. And it's just, I think they're just wonderful people to be around. And the Lily now runs disabled golf, and she's doing a fabulous job. And now they're part of Golf RSA, so they're part of a bigger picture. And let's hope it goes from strength to strength, because the South African Championship that they run, people come from all over the world to play in that. It is so highly regarded by disabled people that play golf everywhere. Everywhere they know about the South African Open Championship. They really run an amazing event, and all credit to them.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear the stories of how much it's grown over the last sort of 15, 20 years. But your emceeing at the Opens have reached legendary status. Still yet to experience one in person, but hopefully maybe the Open will happen later in the year and they'll be able to invite you back. But tell me about commentating on the European tour and things like that. What have you enjoyed most about that, being a part of that environment?
For me, it's fun because I don't do it a lot.
Yeah.
It's not my job. So, for me, it's like a real bonus to be invited over to the Open Championship, or, I've been to the Indian Open a few times and a couple of other tournaments, Spain and Italy and stuff like that. So it's a real bonus for me to go to any of these tournaments. And I work with guys that I used to play with. As I work with Sam Torrance, I used to play with him, Tony Johnson and Warren Humphreys I used to play with, and a whole bunch of other guys, Ewan Murray I used to play with. So, a lot of the guys I played on the tour with that I'm now working with. So, we have a lot in common. We start, no dinner goes. It goes without talking about the good old days,
Yeah.
And just, reminiscing about some of the characters from the times that we played. And it really is. It's like a big family, because every night there are 8 of you going to dinner together, and we wind each other up, we argue, we we just have a lot of fun. And I mean, there's some really talented people there. Doogie Donnelly,
Yes.
he's a Scottish guy, hosts a lot of the tournaments. Dom Hollier, who also is one of the hosts. I mean, they're seriously talented broadcasters. And then obviously, we provide the expert. We're not broadcasters, we're golfers, but they bring us in to provide the expert opinion.
Yeah.
And no, it's a lot of fun. It really is a lot of fun, and you get treated royally. You stay in lovely hotels, and you're going to some of the best golf courses in the world. It's a privilege, no question. It's a privilege.
And I'd imagine that because you guys get on so well, and because you sort of friends off the course, it sort of helps the whole chemistry aspect in the commentary box.
Oh, very much so, because, and I think you can hear the difference between the European commentary and the American commentary.
Yeah.
Where the European guys, there's a little bit of back and forth, and there's a bit of fun going on, and a little bit of chirping going on. Whereas America, there's none of that. You never hear any interaction between the commentators at all. I think, and I, it's interesting because everybody has an opinion. Some people like the American commentary. Some people like the European commentary. Everybody has a different point of view. But I meet many more people that enjoy the European commentary more than the American.
100%, 100%.
The American, for me, they try and make everything more exciting than it is. That's the impression. They always try to make it exciting. But golf's not like that. Golf is a quiet, sedate game. You sit there with your beer there, and you sit there quietly, and you watch Tiger Woods birdie the last 5 holes in a row to win the Masters. But it's kind of done nice and quietly, and it's a little bit more relaxed. And I think that's the way the commentary should be. And that's what the Europeans try and do. But it's going to be interesting. We're in interesting times right now. I think we may see a big change in golf in the next few years in terms of who manages and who owns the game. And I think it might all change in the next few years. I really do. And I'm not sure it's all going to be for the better. But I'm also not negative about it. I think change is like a holiday. Maybe it's the right thing to do. But there's also going to be a big change in the way we watch television. Streaming is coming on now. I think that's all going to be very different. So I think we're in for exciting times.
No, for sure. And I mean, I think going back to what you were saying about the difference between the way the Europeans do things and the way the Americans do things is, I think a lot of people say that the Europeans do a better job of just sort of getting out of the way and letting the golf be the central focus. Whereas, I mean, I may come to regret this in years to come, but guys like Jim Nance and Nick Faldo sort of try and insert themselves into the narrative in a way, and sometimes talk over very sort of crucial things. Like, I mean, a classic example is maybe a caddy conversation between Michael Greller and Jordan Spieth or whatever, where they're trying to decide whether to go for a green and two, for example. Yeah, so it's interesting the different styles that the different guys have.
Yeah, what you're saying is so true, because in the old days it was always sometimes you need to let the picture tell the story.
Yeah.
And Henry Longhurst, the great old broadcaster Peter Allis, that's the way they preferred to commentate. I know that I get shouted at every now and again for talking when you suddenly you could hear Caddy's voice. In Europe they very quickly tell you to shut up, because they want to hear the Caddy's voice.
Yeah.
Whereas, as you say, in America, they would just carry on talking. So, but they're different opinions. I loved talking about Peter Allis. I was fortunate enough. Peter Allis is a hero of mine. I've got to say that up front.
Yeah.
Okay, I've really, I've always enjoyed his books. I've enjoyed his television commentary. He was a wonderful player. People don't realize how good a golfer he was, but he was a terrific player. Played the Ryder Cup, I think, 6 or 7 times. I don't know. I think he won 7 or 8 national opens. So, he was a terrific player. Anyway, I ended up having lunch with him at Augusta about 5 years ago. And we're sitting having lunch and chatting. He was 83 years old then. And I said to him, Peter, when are you going to retire? He said, Dale, I can't retire. He said, because, even I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say next.
That's great.
Isn't that lovely?
Oh my word, that is superb. But I mean, you've been very, very gracious with your time. So I just wanted to actually get into a couple of quick fire questions that I have, and then maybe a couple of the viewers' questions as well, and then we'll let you get on with your day.
I've got plenty of time.
Yeah, I suppose there's no golf to be played, so.
Like Simon Hobday, I said to him, I phoned him up one day and I said, Simon, what are you doing? He said, I'm doing nothing. Next day I phoned him up, I said, Simon, what are you doing? He said, I'm doing nothing. I said, but you were doing nothing yesterday. He said, yes, but yesterday I didn't finish.
That's awesome. I want to hear a couple of stories about him a bit later on. But so I think for me, the burning question that I've had for a while is, so obviously it's been, I think, 8 years or so, nearly 8 years since we had a South African major champion. Who do you think is going to be the next guy to deliver one? And which do you think it'll be?
Wow. There's so many wonderful players playing the game from all over the world now. And I think I might have said this the other day, but, we're going to see more and more Asian names at the top of the leaderboard as the game becomes more popular there. I commentated at the Indian Open for a couple of years. And I tell you, I was absolutely gobsmacked at how many wonderful players there are there that we've never heard of. They've never played outside of India. And that's going to happen. They're going to start traveling. Shubhankar Sharma, came out here on the Joburg Open. And, Shubhankar's a very good player. Well, I tell you, there are another 100 Shubhankar Sharmas there. I promise you. So, I think the game is going to change a lot. From a South African perspective, both Charles Schwartzel and Louis, they both won majors. But I really believe that they are far better players than for both of them to end up their careers with only one major.
Yes.
I really do. Over the last little while, Louis has played some terrific golf. He really has played some wonderful golf over the last year or 15 months. So I would be very surprised if Louis is still not the next one. And I know that I think you are meaning the younger players coming through, but I still think that Louis might be the next South African to win a major. I was very disappointed sort of 2 or 3 years ago that Brandon Grace didn't win, because Brandon had the perfect game, especially for narrow courses. He drove the ball beautifully, and especially in Europe. I mean, he shot the lowest score ever in the Open Championship or ever in the major. So I really thought that Brandon Grace was going to win a major, and he seems to have struggled of late. Although he obviously played very well at the South African Open at Grand Park earlier this year.
Yeah.
So let's hope maybe his game is on the rise again. Of the younger players, right now, Christian Besaidnout, I think looks like he and Eric van Rooyen, I think, are the two that look like they're the most consistently good players.
Yeah.
Brandon Stone, every now and he comes in, he plays wonderful golf, and then he disappears for a while.
Yeah.
Brandon Stone has played some terrific golf. I mean, that Scottish Open that he won was incredible. Obviously he's won other tournaments that he's played some really superb golf. But he hasn't been quite as consistent as Christian and Eric. So I would say Christian and Eric van Rooyen. Eric van Rooyen now is going to play, it seems, much more in America. He's married to an American lady and kind of is, pretty much going to live there. Christian Besaidnout has had a tough time, with he's got a little bit of a stammer, and he's had a tough time with that. But Christian Besaidnout is a lovely guy, and he's a terrific player. He's got the most beautiful golf swing. It's funny, every time he stands up over a golf shot, he stands up over the ball like this, and just the way he's built and everything, I'm expecting him to kind of, really kind of take a swing at it. And the next thing, this club goes back so slowly. It's like every time I kind of get a bit of a fright at how slowly he takes the club back. But I would say Eric van Rooyen, Christian Besaidnout, Brandon Stone would be my top 3 choices right now. As to the next ones after Louis, and maybe even Charles.
Yeah. So I think I know what you're going to say, but where do you stand on the whole Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods debate? Who do you think is the greatest player of all time?
I'm still with Jack Nicklaus, because the records are based on majors. Yeah. So what they've always been based. You say to somebody, is Arnold Palmer a better golfer than Gary Player? Everybody will say Gary Player is better because he's won more majors. They'll say, is Tom Watson a better golfer than Arnold Palmer? Tom Watson, he's won more majors.
Sure.
That's the way it's always been based. So if you're going to be consistent with that, you've got to be consistent and say, well, Jack's won more majors.
Yeah.
Why he's won more majors is not the point. Because if you say he's won more majors, but he hasn't been injured and he didn't have the problems with his family life that Tiger had, etc., well, then you've got to bring in people that missed years during the war.
Yeah.
And you've got to say, well, what happens if Ben Hogan had played more golf? What happens if Ben Hogan hadn't had a car accident? What happens if Sam Reed had never gone to the war? What happens if Bobby Locke never went to the war? What happens if Bobby Locke was never banned from America?
Yeah, or what would have happened if John Daly had been more disciplined and
that was never going to happen. but yes, so I think if you've been consistent and using the criteria of majors, you've got to still stick with one. Plus, Tiger has to win 19 to be better than him. Because if he wins 18, the fact that Jack was runner-up in 19 majors,
it's unbelievable.
He won 18 and was runner-up in 19. Even if Tiger gets to 18, now you've got to have the runner-ups come into play, and then Jack goes ahead again. So Tiger's got a tough time, I think, to ever go ahead of Jack. I think it would be really cool if Tiger did win a couple more majors, 2 or 3 more, or whatever, even. And if he won 5 more and became better than Jack, I'd be the first person to say fantastic. But it'd be great to keep that, that rivalry going. The one sad thing about Tiger is that we haven't had a great rivalry in Tiger's time.
Sure.
The best times in golf were the first great rivalry was obviously the great triumvirate, which is Harry Varden and those guys.
Yeah.
Then you had Bobby Jones and Walter Hagen and Gene Sarazen. Then you had Byron Nelson, Sam Snead, and Ben Hogan. Okay. Then you had obviously Gary Player, Jack Nicklaus, and Arnold Palmer, and that was the greatest rivalry in the history of the game.
Yeah.
And if you go back and you look at the records of those time in major championships, it is absolutely phenomenal. You know, the three of them, how they almost every single major they played, 2 out of the 3 of them were involved, you know, in the last couple of, you know, the last few holes as to who was going to win.
Yes.
So that was a great time in history. Unfortunately, with Tiger was so much better than everybody else. You know, I mean, for a very short time, it looked like Ernie might be a good rival, but it never materialized. Vijay Singh for 1 year, Phil Mickelson a little bit, but nobody ever really challenged Tiger. You know, so that was kind of disappointing.
So it's interesting you say that, because I've actually got a question from my brother here, Richard, who says, was it not more competitive in Tiger's era than Jack's, would you say?
Well, I would say there's certainly many more great players now.
Yeah.
Many more terrific players now. Okay. But the true greats, Jack Nicklaus beat more of them than Tiger did. So if you say, right, we're going to take the top 20 players of all time. Okay. How many of them played when Jack played? So you had Jack, you had Gary Player, you had Lee Trevino, Tom Watson, who else? Lee Trevino, Tom Watson. You had Seve Ballesteros.
Yes,
I'm missing one, but there were 6 of them.
What about Tom Weiskopf, maybe?
Not really. Tom Weiskopf, not really. You know, he only won 1 major. He was a player who was. Tom Weiskopf was kind of exactly what happened with Tiger. You know, if it hadn't been for Tiger, hadn't been for Jack, Tom Weiskopf would have been unbelievable. But he's completely overshadowed by Jack. So there were 6 players when Jack played that would be regarded as in the top 20 of all time. When Tiger played, okay, definitely 1 would be Mickelson. Maybe you put Ernie in there. Ernie would be doubtful though. You know, if you go through the list, Ernie might just make the top 20 of all time. Okay, so maybe 2. So it's 2 versus 6 of the greatest players. But there are more excellent players playing now, no question about that.
Sure. And then, the final question from my side is, if anyone's ever at Swartkorps, can you recommend a meal that they should order off the menu?
Absolutely. The best pizzas in Pretoria. No question about it. Baldovino's Pizza is the best pizza you'll have in Pretoria.
What's on that?
I don't look like I know about food.
Sorry?
I don't look like I know a little bit about food.
I mean, I would like to do another podcast at some point, so I'm not going to say too much.
As Simon Hobday used to say, Hayes, you're the knife and fork champion of Gauteng.
But let's get into a couple of the viewers' questions. So Khalid Mohidin wants to know, for a beginner, what are 3 golden rules that one should abide by?
Wow, golden rules that one should abide by. Well, the first, I'm not talking about the rules of golf as in the rules book, okay? The very first thing you need to do, I believe, is go for lessons with a professional golfer.
Yeah.
That's the very first thing. You got to get the basics right. Once you've got your holding the club correctly, you're standing the ball correctly, you know, you've got the basics and you can understand what makes the golf ball do what it does. So when the ball slices, what makes it slice? When the ball hooks, what makes it hook? I think that would be the very first thing that everybody should make sure they do. The second thing is, I believe, is that you want to find a golf club where you fit in socially. Okay, so
Yeah.
it doesn't always have to be the nearest golf club to where you live, but you want to find a golf club where there are people that you enjoy being with, because
Yeah.
that's what the game of golf is about. It's a social event. Golf is not a real sport. Like it's not like rugby or cricket or soccer
Yeah.
or whatever. Golf, most of the time you're chatting to your buddies.
Yes.
But if you can't find a golf course where you can find a lot of people that you enjoy being with, you're not going to enjoy the game as much as you could. And I think being a member of a golf club, I think I really feel sorry for people who don't join a golf club, because I really think they're missing much of the point of golf. I really do. I think being involved in a golf club, I think is just so much. It makes the game so much more fun. So that would be
Yeah,
the
definitely.
second thing I would
Yeah.
recommend. The third thing I'd recommend is don't rush in and spend a huge amount of money on fancy golf clubs until you
Yeah.
can play you play decently. I would start with the basics, learn to play the game, and then start improving your equipment. So it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be expensive to start the game.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you mention, being part of an actual physical golf club, because our next question relates to your take on virtual clubs, like Playmore Golf. What's your stance on that?
Well, I just think it's very unfair of golfers to expect to join a virtual golf club, or to join a golf club that's 500 miles away from where they live, that's really cheap, that offers one of these cheap memberships, and then go and play golf, on a local golf club, and expect to pay the same rates as members, or just slightly more
Yeah.
affiliated rates.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's very unfair. I think I think you should be a member of the club that you play most often.
Sure.
And I feel quite strongly about that. Obviously a virtual golf club, they don't have the physical golf course to look after.
Mm.
So, their costs aren't anything like a
Yes.
golf club. I mean, right now we're in COVID-19, and it still costs us R500,000 a month to look after our golf course. And nobody's playing on it. It's not one single person hitting a golf ball.
Yeah.
It's R500,000 a month to look after it. So a virtual golf club is costing them not a bean.
Yeah.
They don't have to pay any. They don't have any of those costs. So I think people need to understand that, and then say, hey guys, I want to be involved in golf. I'm a golfer. I want to be a golfer. Well, if you're a golfer, you should be paying part of that.
Yeah.
That's part of the cost of being a golfer. And I feel that it's unfair for people. I think they really are taking advantage of the game, and I think they should really think about it. And I think they are missing so much by not being a member of a proper golf club. A member of a club like down in Cape Town, like Westlake or Mowbray or Clovelly, Cape Town, there's so many terrific golf clubs. People have so much fun at those golf clubs. The chirping that goes on, the fun that they have, the joking, and the competition. If you want a competition, they've got the competition as well. So you can play league, you can play club championships. There are all sorts of advantages.
Mm. Yeah, that's actually that's the most well thought out answer I've probably heard to the question, because it's such an interesting debate. But finally, from my side, I wanted to know what's your best Simon Hobday story, because everyone knows that you guys obviously were very, very good friends. So is there anything that springs to mind?
There are a lot of Simon Hobday stories, and most of them have been told and retold. I mean, Simon Hobday always used to say to me, Hayes, you make a living out of taking the mickey out of me. When I die, you're going to have nothing to talk about. He didn't know that I'd still be telling stories way after he's gone. And Simon's up there, and he's looking down here and said, bloody Hayes, look, he's still taking the mickey out of me. But, Simon was a terrific character. We were playing in Switzerland one year. And Simon, it was those years, it was in the sort of early middle 70s when people were starting to streak. So Simon was the guy called Mike Shevitz. Mike Shevitz was a South African professional who happened to be a lawyer as well.
Okay.
And Simon says to Mike Shevitz, he says, "Hey, Mike," he says, "I'm in a streak." So Mike is expecting Simon to take his clothes off and run somewhere. Anyway, Simon just stands at the bar and takes all his clothes off. Stands at the bar and carries on drinking. With nothing on. Anyway, a little while later, Hugh Bioki and his wife walk in. So somebody says to him, "Simon, you better watch out. Hugh Bioki and his wife have just walked in. You better put something on." So Simon reaches down, picks up his underpants and puts him on his head. He carries on drinking. Well, eventually he leaves the bar, and the whole time now, Mike Shevitz is trying to get him to put some clothes on, but Simon leaves the bar with nothing on, holding the clothes under his arm. And Mike Shevitz now is running across the road in opposite ways to try and get away from Simon. Simon just keeps following him because he's scared they're going to get arrested. Anyway, the next day, they now gets around what's happened, and Simon now is called in front of the committee of the European tour. And so we're all waiting now to hear what's going to happen. No, he's going to get fined. He's going to get banned. What's going to happen? And an hour later, Simon walks out. So we say, "Simon, what happened?" He said, "No," he said, "they threw the case out of court." He said, "the evidence wouldn't stand up."
Oh, that's great.
Now, that same tournament, which is the Swiss Open in Caen-sur-Sierre,
Yeah.
one of the most beautiful places on earth. The one year, Simon decides to do his washing. So he takes his entire suitcase and he tips it into the bathtub. And he hasn't got washing soap, so he takes the soap and cuts it with a knife and puts that in and then stirs it. He's sharing a room with Tinny Brits. He stirs it with Tinny Brits' butter. And he stirs it all up like this. Okay, and then he finishes, then he lets out the water, puts in some new water, lets out that water, puts in some new water, okay, takes out the clothes, hangs all the shirts and socks and underpants over the balcony, okay, of the room that he's in. Anything that has to be ironed, he puts between the mattress and the bottom of the bed. That's his ironing. That's how he irons his clothes. Okay, so anyway, by the next day, the clothes are dry and everything like that, and off he goes. He puts the clothes on and off he goes to play. But now he hasn't taken all the soap out of these clothes. So he's coming up the 9th fairway at Caen-sur-Sierre, and it starts to drizzle. And as it starts to drizzle, the bubbles start taking his clothes. He looked like an angel coming up the fairway with all these bubbles around him. Just walking up the 9th fairway at Caen-sur-Sierre. That was Simon Hobday, one of the greatest characters I ever met.
Yeah, it certainly does. It certainly does sound like it. Here's actually a pretty good question from a friend of mine to finish off. Who would you have in your dream four ball?
Walter Hagen. Walter Hagen was one of the great characters of golf. He won 11 major championships, yeah. And he never played in the Masters until he was an older man. So he won 11 majors out, and he only played in 3. So Walter Hagen would be definitely, he was a man that coined the phrase, "Don't hurry, don't worry, make sure you stop to smell the flowers on the way." And he also said, "I never wanted to be a millionaire. I just wanted to live like one." So Walter Hagen would be one. Bobby Jones would be the other. Because okay. I think Bobby Jones was probably one of the smartest golfers, one of the cleverest golfers. He had two degrees, started the Masters tournament, built Augusta National, did so much for the game of golf. And then I think the third one would be Ben Hogan. I did see him hit a couple of shots, but I never saw him play golf. I think Ben Hogan, Walter Hagen, and Bobby Jones.
Joe, that sounds like illustrious company. That's fantastic. Well, but thank you so much for your time. It's been such fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Give my best to your dad.
Yeah, we'll do. We'll chat soon. Cheers. Cool. Thank you so much, Dale. That was
pleasure, man.